Welcome again, ENC students. This is Professor Bloomingberg, and the purpose of this video is to introduce you to the key concepts from the Fixing Common Sentence Problem Study Guide. And it could be that I am required to make a couple of videos, maybe even more, to just break up the concepts of the study guide. We'll see how things go on it, but definitely I want to walk you through a few things, and I think that the more practice we get with the study guide, the stronger chance that your writing is going to improve as we go through the semester. So on the study guide, one of the first things that you're going to see is a section on run-on sentences. But we have to start from the very beginning in terms of understanding the concepts. So the first way that we want to think about this, and I'm going to make this font maybe as big as possible. So we want to think of it from the standpoint of independent clauses. And the best way to think about independent clauses are these are clauses that can stand alone. That is, there's enough qualifying information within the context of the phrase so that it can stand alone as a sentence that makes sense. So for example, I walked to the store. That's an example of an independent clause. We have a subject I. The verb is walked. We have prepositional phrasing there, which is to the store. Store, of course, is another noun. Don't want to get too carried away with that, but you can see that it stands alone and it makes sense by itself. Now we also have what are called, if I can type here, dependent clauses, which need additional information to stand alone as a sentence. If we were to break up the sentence that we just had, you might see that I walked. Now it's about as simple as it gets. It is a subject verb. It can stand alone, but if we were again going to the sentence, the next sentence would be to the store. That's actually what we call a fragment, because that is not enough qualifying information to isolate that and make it stand alone as a sentence. So it becomes a dependent clause. That is, it is looking for this particular part, the I walked, to connect it together so that it can stand alone and make sense. So it's very important to have the concepts of independent versus dependent clause as we move forward. And again, I gave you a pretty good definition of independent clause on the study guide, and hopefully this information on dependent makes sense. I'm going to backtrack out now, and what I want to do is look at run-on sentences, and I'm going to see if maybe off the top of my head I can create a run-on sentence. My favorite team is Kentucky. I think the team will do well this season. Here's an example of a run-on sentence. What happens with the run-on is when you have two or more independent clauses that are bumping together without any punctuation, we have a run-on. And the first way to fix a run-on is to see where one independent clause ends and the next one begins. In this case, the split is between Kentucky and I. Once you identify that split, you can begin to correct it by applying one of the three ways to fix a run-on that's listed on page 1 of the study guide. The easiest way to fix a run-on is to place a period in between the split. And maybe what I'll do, since I'm looking at one sentence, I want to make sure you guys can see it well. Try to blow it up just a little bit more. There we go. So you can see I just put a period there, created two separate sentences, and off to the races I went. That being said, as the study guide suggests, you just don't want to fix it this way all the time. The issue becomes short, choppy sentences. I want you to listen, and I'll just kind of assume that I'm going on with this structure. My favorite team is Kentucky. I think the team will do well this season. The Harrison twins are improved. Coach Calipari will have them ready. I'm going to stop there because you can hear the pattern. It's very short, stilted, choppy. Not a lot of what I like to say is the up and down cadence of the language. Good writing has a seesaw up and down kind of quality to it. And so there's nothing wrong with fixing it with a period, but the key to this lesson is knowing that you have other options and that you can mix up your sentence structures. If you can keep that in mind, that mixing up the sentence structures is the way to go, you'll be in a good position to be successful in your writing. So I'll take that out, and what I will do is I will show you another way to fix it, which is with a comma, and this brings us to the first listing of words, which are fanboys. I'm going to choose the fanboy and. So my favorite team is Kentucky, and I think the team will do well this season. Now, as I read that, you might have been able to hear that little seesaw quality that kind of brought things up in terms of the up and down quality of the language, and that's what we want to shoot for. I want to come down here, though, and I want to stress to you this an acronym, fanboys. It is an acronym, and each letter in the word fanboys does, in fact, represent a coordinating conjunction. That's just a short way of saying coordinating conjunctions. So it's for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So if you can remember the term fanboys and try to match up which fanboy coordinates to each coordinating conjunction, you have a good chance of remembering your first set of words. I think for this video we're just going to concentrate in on fixing run-ons, and I'll make I'll try to do this soon, but I'll make some follow-up videos for fixing comma splices and run-on, not run-ons, but fragments. So anyways, we'll focus in on that. So let's focus in on the first grouping of words, fanboys. And you can see right here that I added the first one in, and I'll bold it so that you can see it. That is our fanboy, and anytime you have two or more independent clauses joined with comma, you have to have a fanboy to separate them. If I take this fanboy out, I'm actually left, as you can see, with a comma splice, which we don't want to have. That's a whole other error, so I want to put that and back in. So review that list of fanboys, and I think it'll start to make sense. However, to take us back to where we were, you can also use a different way to fix the error, which is a semicolon. It kind of looks like a period with a comma underneath, or a squiggly looking lowercase j, as I've heard some students refer to it. Either description is apt, but it's a very strong punctuation mark. In fact, it is the only punctuation mark that by itself is strong enough to hold together two or more independent clauses. So again, alone it can do that. A comma by itself cannot. It's not strong enough. Again, that's a comma splice. So if we put the semicolon in, here are a couple of rules to keep in mind. You want to test to make sure that this part of the structure is independent. And, oh, I see a mistake I made. See, this is where if I was in class, my students would let me know. I forgot to put my pronoun I back in. So this part has to be independent, and the second part has to be independent. So you can always check. If you see the semicolon is placed correctly, to test it, make sure it's independent on both sides. The other way to think about it is, do the structures carry equal weight? In other words, is what's being said over here just as balanced and equal as what's being said over here? And that's certainly true, because if we know that Kentucky's the writer's favorite team, then saying that the team will do well is equally balanced. So it's kind of like a balancing act. If you can see the scales, sometimes I compare it to the scales of justice. They tip, and then they kind of balance out. So think of it that way. I had to throw the hand motions in so you could see exactly what I was talking about. Let's see. Oh, you can also optionally use what's called a conjunctive adverb, which is on the bottom of page 1, top of page 2 of the study guide. Here's how that works. You just look through the list and you can see they're pretty close to transitional words. And you just pick one that makes sense. Like I might say in addition, and they're used with semicolons, so please note that. You only use those conjunctive adverbs with semicolons. You can't use them with commas. That is to say, if we had a comma fanboy, we wouldn't add in a conjunctive adverb. But I could put my in addition. Please note, and this is on something I've been observing for teaching for a while, it's very easy to forget that comma that comes after the conjunctive adverb. Now I want to show you a couple of quick things before we wrap up this video. I want to go back and let's see what will happen if I add in a however. It's a conjunctive adverb. I picked it from the list. My favorite team is Kentucky. However, I think the team will do well this season. And it doesn't really make sense in the context of the sentence because however shows contrast. And we don't have a contrast. It's the favorite team that the writer thinks is going to do well. So the lesson here is you just can't pick and choose from the list. You have to pick the conjunctive adverb that will fit into the context of the sentence. Same thing if I go back to comma fanboy. If I tried to show a contrast and put a but in there, or even a yet, it wouldn't work. So my favorite team is Kentucky, but I think the team will do well this season. No, that doesn't work. We can change that up to put and, or maybe even a so, or something that connects those ideas together. So there is in fact one other way to fix it, and this is kind of conceptual. I want to go back here to how it originally appeared. You can, on the bottom of page 2 under sentence fragments, you can become comfortable with the third grouping of words, which are called subordinating conjunctions. And what you do is anytime you see them at the start of a sentence, it's going to change the entire structure. So if I put in because my favorite team is Kentucky, note that we need a comma in that case. I think the team will do well this season. Now this one little word right here changed the whole complexion of the sentence. And when I put that in, it made this structure right here dependent. And the way to test that is if I just came in and said, because my favorite team is Kentucky, and stopped, you would want to know where I'm going with the sentence. There's an idea that needs to follow. So that's why it's dependent upon the rest of the sentence. I think the team will do well. So you can plug in that subordinate, and it's a good way to show variety in your sentence structure. But when you do that, please note the formula, and I don't want to go too fast here, but we have dependent clause plus comma right here, followed by independent clause. If you can keep that in mind as a formula, I think it's a good way to think about using subordinates. Start red flagging them too as far as how they appear at the start of your sentence. When you see them at the start, you know that it's going to be a dependent clause and it's going to need a comma and then an independent. Really work on that in your reading and also how you reflect that idea in your writing. And I think I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to work very soon within the next week on a couple of follow-up videos, perhaps one on comma splices, which really are just run-on sentences. But the difference is the writers put a comma in place of the split, which is not strong enough to hold those clauses together. And I'll also work on a video on fragments. So we'll tackle these issues one at a time. But for now, I hope you found this first video helpful. If you have questions, feel free to email me, but we'll follow up with more videos in the future. Take care.